Hello, this is Eve Moffat. I'm the host of Hope is Alive. And this is Kay Gibbs. She's my co-host today.
Hi.
Hi, Kay. Hope is Alive is a show about, well, life's disappointments, setbacks, and adversities. And they happen to everybody. But our purpose of our show is to dramatize how these disappointments and setbacks can get you down, but there's a way out. Our guest today is Ginger Lindquist. Hi, Ginger.
Hi, Eve. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
And Ginger survived her husband's death.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about it.
Well,
I really want to hear about how life was before.
okay, thanks. First of all, I met Pete when I was 38 years old. I had been divorced for 13 years, and I was really good being alone. I am able to amuse myself quite easily, and I was really okay with life. And then this wonderful man came into my life, and my life changed. Everything changed. He had an 8-year-old daughter. I had always said I didn't want kids. And I have to tell you, that was probably the most difficult adjustment for me. I was not used to sharing. And having an 8-year-old little girl in my life suddenly made me understand how selfish I had been.
She lived with you?
We had joint custody of her, so we had her about half the time. She was a delight. But I was not prepared for a child. But her husband and I, or my husband and I, her father, had such a bond that I was willing to accept the fact that, okay, this was not what I was looking for in life, but this is what I have. Pete and I, from the very first date, I knew that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. As it turned out, it was the rest of his life together. But our life was good. We met in Minnesota. We both had a love for Hawaii. I had lived there in the past, and he had been there when he was in the service. So we decided after a couple of years that we would move to Hawaii. We got married barefoot on the beach on the north shore of Oahu.
Oh.
We were resident managers of an apartment complex on Kauai. It was perfect for us. I had management skills. He had maintenance skills. He had worked construction his whole life. It was a wonderful lifestyle. We went to the beach every day after work. We both loved the water. We both loved the whole culture of Hawaii. I dance hula, and it was a wonderful part of our life. We got married when I was 42, I believe, and for the next almost 20 years, we had a really great life. We moved here in 1996. I had not lived near my family for 30 years.
Here you mean
Here
Arizona.
in Arizona, right. My dad had retired here, and I had decided that as difficult as it was to leave Hawaii, we had to come back. Our folks were both getting older. It was almost impossible financially to try to get back at the last minute without spending an arm and a leg on airfare.
Yeah.
So when my dad retired here, we came to visit him, and we looked around and we thought, this isn't Hawaii, but this is really beautiful.
That must have been a very difficult decision to make.
Well, was the child still at home when you did make that decision?
She was a teenager, and at that point she had decided that instead of being with us every weekend, she had other more important things to do with her friends every weekend. So we decided that would be a really good time to leave. At that point she was 13, and when we first broached the subject with her, she was really sad and really upset. She came back the following weekend and she said, "So if you guys move to Hawaii, I can come spend summers with you, right?" And I said, "Right." And it was like, "Okay, you guys just go ahead and go. I'll be fine. I'll see you every summer." And that's what happened, and it was really wonderful.
Oh, good. So it worked out.
It did work out well.
That could be a big stumbling point, very difficult. So that was.
She and her dad were so close. They talked almost every day on the phone.
Oh boy, it's close.
And once we moved to Hawaii, he called her at least 2 times a week. As I said, she would come and spend summers with us. It was really a wonderful thing for her in the long run.
Yeah.
I feel bad for her real mom, because her real mom had to put up with all that teenage angst that I was kind of far removed from.
Yes.
So it worked out for all of us.
That's honest.
That's honest. Well, what happened?
About 3 years ago in May, I came home from work one day, and Pete had said that he thought he might be having a stroke. He was having some numbness in his right arm and his right leg. He had VA insurance, and so I asked him, we had plans for dinner that night, And I asked him, I said, well, before we go to dinner, do you just want to stop at the VA clinic and see what they say, if they have time to see you? And he was concerned enough about it that he felt that he needed to do that. So we stopped at the clinic. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon, and they took his blood pressure, and they asked him what his symptoms were, and immediately sent him over to the VA hospital in Prescott. So we got there in the evening. By 11 o'clock that night, they had done CAT scans, and we found out that there was something going on the left side of his brain. They thought that perhaps it was a hemorrhage. I went and spent the night, rather than drive home, I just spent the night in a hotel there. And I remember laying there at night thinking, a hemorrhage? I don't even know what a brain hemorrhage is, but it sounded horrible.
Yes.
A couple days later, I would have been happy to have found out that it really was a brain hemorrhage. He had a number of tests over the next couple of days, and what we discovered was that the masses in his head were a secondary tumor, and that his original cancer was from his kidneys. People have asked me so many times, well, didn't he have symptoms? I'm sure he did, but he worked construction. He always had a lower backache. He had had migraines since he was a teenager. He constantly was complaining of headaches. So the two things that would have been indicative to us were part of our normal routine of life. And so we just didn't know that there was anything wrong. By the time that we left the hospital on Wednesday, on the 19th, which was our the 21st anniversary of our first date, we found out that it was kidney cancer. The brain cancer had come as a secondary part, and he probably had very few options. We went to an oncologist. We did find out that he could have had a biopsy of the tumor. When I asked the doctor what that would mean, he said, well, it might add a little bit more life. And I asked the doctor, I said, what would you do if it was you? And he said that he would probably choose hospice, because the amount of life that we could have bought Pete with the biopsy probably wasn't worth the energy and the
expense
and the risk.
Yes.
So I asked, Pete it took him a week to decide what he wanted to do.
May I ask how old he was?
He was 64.
64.
Very young.
Yeah.
And certainly we didn't expect that. But he did choose to go on hospice. He was alive until June 15th. And on June 15th, one of my best friends, his daughter, his sister, and I, along with the hospice nurse, were there when he peacefully transitioned.
Wow.
It was so quick, though. It was really hard to wrap my mind around. My birthday was 11 days after he passed, and had somebody told me 6 weeks prior to my birthday, my 60th birthday, that Pete would not have been there, I would have laughed at them. This is a healthy, vital man. Of course he's going to be there in 6 weeks, but he wasn't. So it was just really quick, which in many ways is a real blessing.
Yes.
But it was such a shock for all of us, and I can't imagine that he had any idea. He said at one point to me, he said, I thought that there was something wrong for a long time, but I don't think that he thought that it was that serious.
No, not that serious. So from the time you went to the hospital to the time of his death was how long?
Less than a month.
Wow. Wow, that's no time to make adjustments, or was he aware that he was terminally ill?
Yes.
And did he make any plans or closures or?
No, it was really interesting. When we went to the oncologist and I asked for a prognosis, the oncologist said that he said this is usually months rather than years. So in both of our minds, I think that we thought that we had months.
Oh.
And it was only probably around the 1st of June, 2 weeks before he died, that I realized how quickly he was deteriorating. Unfortunately, because of the tumors, he was losing a lot of his cognitive abilities. There was one day, it broke my heart. He was in brushing his teeth, and I had gone out to get something. I came back in, and he had put the toothpaste on the wrong part of the toothbrush. And he just looked at me, and he said, "Why can't I remember?" And to see the pain in his eyes, and that's one of the reasons that for me it was such a blessing that he went as quickly as he did. It was so hard to watch this strong, vital man deteriorate in front of my eyes, to be so confused that he was unable to answer questions by the last week.
It must be distressing that you weren't able to step in and do
Fix it.
something. Or
Fix it,
or,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's that impulse
Yes.
that you have, and you must have felt, maybe angry, resentful?
I was not.
Scared?
Do you know what? I have
What
to
are you
tell you,
feeling? Yes.
everything in my life had prepared me for that. For the past 2 years prior to that, I was really working on myself. You've heard that phrase, "It is what it is." It was more important to me not only to accept what it was, but to love what was. I read a book by Byron Katie called Loving What Is, and it was such a preparation for me for this, because one of the things that was important to both Pete and I was to stay in the moment. We knew that we didn't have a lot of time. Where we found our greatest joy was just by staying in the moment and truly relating to one another.
Staying in the moment. It's by who?
The name of the book was Loving What Is by Byron Katie.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful preparation for me, because I would have felt anger, I would have felt resentment, except that what I was feeling was great joy that we had a few more, at that point I thought a few more months together. I was also feeling great. I live in such a place of gratitude. I was so thankful that I had spent 21 years with this wonderful man. And we lived in a state of abundance, and I don't mean monetary. I can give you a small example.
Okay.
One of the things towards the end that Pete really loved were smoothies. And he loved making his smoothies with yogurt. And he went to the refrigerator one morning and opened up the refrigerator, and there was no yogurt. And he said, "Oh, I can't make a smoothie." And so I called my friend Sandy, who was coming over later that day, and I said, "Sandy, can you stop at the store and bring some yogurt?" And she did, and Pete was taking a nap when she got here. Later in the afternoon, he opened up the door, and he said, "We truly do live in a state of abundance. There's 2 containers of yogurt in the refrigerator." And that's just an example, though, of what we found during that last time, of staying in the moment, of living in gratitude, of just being appreciative of what we do have, and that we still had it for a little while longer. So no, I didn't feel any anger. I didn't feel. I look back now and it's just a blur. I kept a journal, and I go back and I read my journal just recently, and it was so interesting to me because I had forgotten so much of what I was feeling, because it was just one thing after another, and it was hard just to keep up. And I was sleep deprived, and a number of other things too.
Did your husband pass at home?
He did.
He did. No hospice house. He was at home.
No, he was at home. That's where he wanted to be. Actually, he was such a kind and gentle and selfless person, and he didn't want to be in the bed because he was afraid he would keep me awake. So what he asked for was to put a mattress on the floor beside the bed, so that he could be beside me. But he was so concerned about me getting enough sleep and things like that. And actually, when he passed, he was sitting up, kind of leaning against the bed, sitting on his mattress.
Okay.
But he was that last day was so peaceful.
Did you grieve?
I'm still grieving.
Grieving.
Yes. But grief is an interesting thing. It's something that everybody has to do in their own time frame. And I, again, was very fortunate that I had tools. I had these spiritual tools that I could call on. Plus, I never felt like I was going through this alone. I have the best friends in the whole world, and they surrounded me with love and compassion. And one of the many, many, many things I learned from that is it's a blessing to let people help you. Most of us are, and I'm certainly the worst at that. I am so self-sufficient. No, I can do it myself. I'm fine, just let me do it.
Yes.
But I found out that I was denying other people the blessings of being able to help when I didn't allow them to do so.
How did you come to that awareness?
One of my best friends, we were talking on the phone, and she said, "What can I do?" And I said, "Bonnie, there's nothing you can do for me right now." And she said, "I know that you believe that, but you need to realize that I'm asking you because I want to help you, and if I have nothing to do for you, then how can I help?" And that was a wonderful, loving way of telling me to stop being so damn selfish and just let people help.
Yeah. That was
That's a
very
good
wise
message,
of her.
right?
Yes,
It was a great message. Yes.
What have you learned through all of this?
Oh my goodness, I have learned so much. Probably the most important lesson for me is that no matter what happens, there is a silver lining on the other side. No matter how horrible you think that your life is, it's not going to stay that way. One of the wonderful things about change is that it's constantly happening. And I hated the fact that Pete was no longer with me. We were supposed to grow old together.
Yes.
And he was 64 years old. I was 60. And I remember shortly after he died, and I was feeling sorry for myself, the, oh, we were supposed to grow old together thing. I saw on TV about a military wife who was 28 and had just lost her husband. And I thought, you know what? To her, we did grow old together.
Yeah.
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 And so one of the lessons was to keep everything in perspective.
So it was after he passed,
Mm-hmm.
did you do some purging in the home? Did you move? Did you stay? What were the changes that manifested in your physical life?
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because do you know, healing and grief are not only emotional, there's a physical healing, there's a spiritual healing, there's a mental healing, as well as that physical, emotional healing.
Yes.
Because everything had changed in my life. Every single thing had changed. I had just applied for a new job a couple weeks before Pete died, before we got the diagnosis. And when I was making that transition into that job, I realized that that was a real blessing. I have a wonderful job. I love my job. And the people, I work for HIA, Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Yavapai College. So I am surrounded by peers, people my age, who are vital and want to learn and want to share what they've learned. And that brought so much joy into my life. I did not move. I thought about it, but I decided that especially starting this new job, I just wanted to give things a chance here. I cleaned, oh my goodness, I would wear myself out cleaning just because I couldn't sleep at night. And so physically I had to wear myself out so that when my head hit that pillow I could actually go to sleep.
Yes.
There were things that I learned to do, like things like that, to just maintain my own balance. I do something that brings me joy every single day. I think that that's so important, to find joy. I had to search for joy. But if at the end of the day I had not done anything to bring me joy or seen anything to bring me joy, I would get up and put on music and I'd dance, because dancing always brings me joy.
Yes.
But it was a matter of taking care of myself. One of my favorite quotes is by, I believe it's Joan Didion, who said, of all of the widow's many duties, the most important one is on the first year anniversary of her husband's death to say to herself, I kept myself alive.
Ah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a struggle. I didn't care. But at some point something changed. At some point I decided to choose life.
Yes.
You don't
Yes.
know the precipitating
I think there were a
moment?
number of things. I facilitate a class at Ali called After the Loss of Your Spouse.
Yes.
One of the things that I truly believe is that when we learn lessons, it's important to share our lessons. And through this last class that I did this last winter, I did have a couple of aha moments that turned my life around. One of them was when I saw myself sitting in that classroom giving these folks all of these wonderful tools and realizing, oh wait, I've got all these tools. I'm not using these tools. Why am I telling all these folks to use their tools and I'm not using my own tools? And so that was one of those moments that...
What's some of the tools?
Some of the tools are relying on other people, relying on, well, being in gratitude.
Yes.
To me, that's still the biggest one, is being in
Yes.
gratitude for everything that we have. Being in the moment, telling people when you love them that you love them. Do it now. Don't wait until after it's too late. And I told Pete every day, many, many times, that I loved him. But I do that with my friends. I never leave my friends without saying, I love you.
Oh.
And I think that just realizing what I still have, yes, I lost Pete. He was a huge chunk of my life. But look at everything I still have. I'm healthy. I have a bright mind. I am able to go out into the world and make a difference. I have people who love me. I've got so much. Why would I sit and mourn in this one spot and ignore the rest of the world?
A lot of times I think moving from grief, you have the sorrow and the loss, and maybe this feel sorry, and then all of a sudden that seems to transition into the joy of memory of all the good things, instead of dwelling on the the heartache and the loss. That sometime in your process you let go of that and you move into joyous memories, And you say gratitude and attitude, right?
Yes.
That's one of your sayings,
Yes.
Eve. And that's so true.
It is true.
Yeah.
I do believe that what you said is true also. I think that at some point we realize that nobody can ever take the memories away. Nobody can ever take away from me those 21 years of joy that we had. And when I can, again, it goes back to being in the moment, when I can allow myself to sit in this space right now and say, oh my goodness, life is good. In this moment, everything is perfect.
Right.
And if I can just go from moment to moment, then it's all good.
That's good.
Yes. There is one more thing that was really important to me, and this is something that is really out of the box.
Out of the box. Okay.
However, during that first, I'm going to say 8 months, the drive to and from work was really interesting because I would leave the house feeling sad because Pete wasn't there. And I'd go to work and I'd be so in the moment, and everything was perfect at work. And I would be driving home, and knowing that Pete was not going to be there when I got home
Yes.
was just devastating to me.
Yes.
And I was working up in Sedona, on the Sedona campus at the time. And I can remember one day driving home, rolling down both windows and screaming at the top of my lungs
Wow.
just to let that anxiety out. And it felt so good, I did it again and again. And that day on the way home, I bet I screamed 6 times, just at the top of my lungs, just a
Scream.
primal scream. But I felt so much better afterwards. And that's one of the things that I tell my class. You know, if you have built up anxiety, find a way to let it out, be it dancing or screaming or whatever. But if you're going to scream, probably don't do it in your house or your neighbors are going to be calling 911. Hello, my neighbor is in great distress.
I think an example of that was a film, Fanny and Alexander, and she had lost her husband. He was older, and the shot was she was pacing in this hall of this kind of deckhall, and she was screaming and sobbing and pacing, and everybody just stood back and let her do it.
How wonderful.
Yeah, they allowed that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good
and
example.
I think that's really a good point, because oftentimes when we're in a place of loss and grief, we're so concerned about the people around us, and we don't want to be the center of attention, and we don't want everyone paying attention to us. And so I think that it's really important to know, it was important for me to know that I didn't really care at that point what society thought. If I wanted to scream in my car in the middle of the road, I was going to do it. If I was in a restaurant and I saw a couple together holding hands and I wanted to cry, I cried. And I think that that was one of the things that got me through it as well as I did, was I was able to just be with my feelings. If I was feeling sad, I let myself cry. If I was feeling happy, I let myself laugh, hopefully without guilt.
Ah, yes, another thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Guilt.
And dealing with that guilt for me was the most difficult part, and it wasn't even a survivor's guilt. It was just a overall guilt. I felt responsible for everything that had ever gone wrong in the whole world.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
But I think that when you're in that space and you're trying to dig yourself out, you have to do it inch by inch by inch. And the first thing that I had to let go was the guilt.
Yeah.
This was not my fault. I had nothing to do with this. And had it been up to me, it would not have ended this way.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody that's facing this?
The most important advice anyone ever gave me was Pete's sister, Karen. She was there when he passed, and a couple of days after Pete had gone and I was sitting there crying, she came up and she put her arms around me. She said, "Be gentle with yourself." And I realized later that if I could be gentle with myself, I could be gentle with others. And not only did that serve me well, but it served those around me well.
How were you gentle with yourselves?
By letting go of the guilt, by not having regrets, by not beating myself up when I wanted to just sit and cry, by just allowing myself to be, again, in that space that I was. And I also found out that when I'm able to be gentle with myself, there's a calmness, I'm not anxious. I'm not out to prove anything. I'm just able to be.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most important piece of advice. I think that one of the messages for me was how happy I am that we took home movies. We took videos
Oh, that's
all
important.
the time.
Yeah.
And the most important thing about that was when I was missing Pete's voice, I could put in one of those videos. And I could not only see him, but I could hear his voice. And so I tell everyone that I know, if you're in a loving relationship, take videos of one another so that you have those memories, not only in your mind, but so you can hear his voice, so you can see his face. And it helps you remember the good times so that you can let go of all the pain that happened when
And it's so
with
much
the death.
easier now to do that. I mean, it's just that
Yes.
we all have that capacity now. What are you thinking about for your future?
I'm not real sure.
You're open?
You're
am
open,
so
yeah.
open. Truly, at this point, I'm not at all interested in dating. I have a really full life. I have my friends. I have a job that I love. I have my family. I have my cat. I have a stepdaughter who just told me that I am going to be a grandma.
Oh, how nice.
And that's like the rebirth. It's so interesting to me that this year, after 3 years out, not only did I have that big turn in my own ability to handle this, but I'm getting all of these blessings now to find out that Pete is going to have a grandchild. I think it's a granddaughter, but we'll see. And he would be such a great grandpa. I have to tell you, there was that moment of sadness, like, oh my goodness, Pete's not here to watch this,
Yes.
to be here for this. But I am. And I can be his representative to this child of who his grandpa, his or her grandpa was. And I think that's going to add a lot more joy to my life. As long as I still love my job, I want to continue to work. I don't think I will stay here in the desert. I am kind of a water person, and I'm 17 years here in the desert, still asking myself every day how I ended up here. So I think that once I'm retired, I will probably move someplace where there's an ocean.
Yes.
And but you know what? I am so open to whatever happens. I just feel that I have been so blessed, and I've led a charmed life. And even with the losses that come with life, everybody goes through loss. Everybody has some sort of adversity in their life. And it's such a cliche, but it's so true. It doesn't matter what happens to you, it's how you handle what happens to you.
Yes.
That's the defining moment.
Yes. Well, this has really been interesting.
Thank you.
You've come a long way.
I have, thank you. Because of my friends.
Yeah.
Important messages
Thank you.
sprinkled throughout. I hope the listeners are taking notes.
I hope they're
Yeah,
taking
thank you.
notes.
I hope so too.
Yes.
And if I could just give one more thing. The reason that I'm here is I truly believe that you never know when something that you say to someone else is going to change their life.
Yes.
And I feel that it's really important to go out into the world every day as if you make a difference. That's a quote from the Joy the Joy of Possibility. And I believe that if you do go out every day into the world as if you make a difference, you will. And you never know when what you say is going to impact someone. So share your truth wherever and however you can. And I thank you for allowing me to come here and share my truth today.
Oh, wow, this has been great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ginger.
Thank you
you for
so
having
much,
me.
Ginger. This is Eve Moffitt with Kay Gibbs, my co-host, and our guest, Ginger Lindquist. This is Hope is Alive, and Hope is alive.
Don't waste another moment on fools and things that keep you down. They can't or won't change, but you can. You can turn your life around. We all have made mistakes. Chances are we'll make some more. Start living life. This ain't no game. Don't need you keeping score. Miracles still happen. They're happening every day. Just stand right up and shout out loud. I need a miracle to come my way. And you'll never give up, never give up, never give up. Never give up, never give up, never give up. Never give up, never give up, never give up. You never give up, never give up, never give up. Everyone goes through bad times. You're not the only one. Don't waste time feeling sorry for